everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
A new Prime Minister by lunchtime? Well, quite possibly. We'll explore that question. Where will the supporters of now out of the race Boris Johnson go to? Will Penny make it to 100? Might she drop out before then? Might we have our new Prime Minister very soon indeed? We'll be exploring all of that after the headlines.
Good morning, it is 9:30. I'm Tatiana Sanchez in the GB newsroom. Tory MPs will decide today which candidates will go through to the first round of the Conservative leadership contest after Boris Johnson ruled himself out. Rishi Sunak thanked the former Prime Minister for his service to the country after his withdrawal. Meanwhile, sources close to Penny Mordaunt says she is still running to be the leader of the Conservative Party. Well, Member of Parliament for South Northamptonshire and Mordaunt supporter Andrea Leadsom says Boris did the right thing not to run.
I and Penny have the greatest respect for Boris. You know, he is a huge asset and I think he's absolutely done the right thing. But it's really important that there is a contest. Penny is a candidate who can unite all sides of the party, and it's very important that we actually give people a choice. And during the course of just the next few days, both the public and, of course, importantly, members will be able to see the 2 candidates and make their decision. It's only a few days, and for the sake of that, I think it's very much in the interests of the nation.
The Defence Secretary has rejected Russian claims that the West is colluding with Ukraine and is planning to detonate a dirty bomb. Ben Wallace warned Moscow against using the claim as a pretext to escalate the conflict. Russia's repeatedly alleged Ukraine could launch a false flag attack and blame it on Moscow. 4 Just Stop Oil activists have been arrested for willful obstruction after blocking traffic on London's Abbey Road. Yesterday, protesters recreated the pose from the cover of the Beatles' Abbey Road album at the crossing while stopping cars on both carriages. They were later taken into custody. And BT and Openreach employees are staging fresh strikes today in a dispute over pay. Members of the Communication Workers Union, including 999 call handlers, will walk out for 24 hours. BT wants a pay rise of £1,500 and say they'll take further strike action if needed. TV, online and DAB Plus radio. This is GB News. Now it's back to the briefing with Tom Harwood.
A very good morning to you. It's 9:33 and this is The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, on your TV and your radio. So what a weekend in Westminster it was. Of course, as we've heard, Boris Johnson last night ruled himself out of the leadership election. It seems that the country will have to wait a little longer for that much-touted Cincinnatian return of the former Prime Minister that he hinted at when he tendered his resignation. In a statement last night, the former Prime Minister said, "I believe I have much to offer, but I'm afraid that this is simply not the right time." Now, this move seemingly clears a path for Rishi Sunak to become the next Tory leader and indeed Prime Minister, with Penny Mordaunt yet to publicly receive the 100 nominations that would be needed by 2 p.m. today. As unprecedented events have come to define modern politics, it would be unwise to assume anything, however. Nominations must be submitted by 2 p.m, with Tory members then deciding the result if two candidates reach that 100 threshold. And if just one candidate is nominated, or indeed if Penny drops out, we could see our third Prime Minister in as many months as soon as this afternoon. Well, let's cross live to Westminster now, as I'm joined by our political editor, Darren McCaffrey on College Green, and our political reporter, Olivia Utley, at Downing Street for us. We've got the whole of Westminster covered. Olivia, let's start with you. Liz Truss in that building behind you, but potentially only for a few hours more.
Well, yes. As you say, Tom, it's quite right. You can't assume anything, but it's looking more and more likely that Penny Mordaunt will either back out or not get the 100 backers that are needed to get on the ballot paper. Paul Goodman, editor of Conservative Home, who's very close up to Conservative MPs and members, has suggested that she won't have the numbers. It would take all of Boris Johnson's declared backers, plus another third of the parliamentary party, to get her on the ballot paper. And although her supporters have spoken to the Penny Mordaunt camp and they are still being very bullish, it is looking increasingly unlikely. So it seems quite possible that we could have a Rishi Sunak Prime Minister by 2:05 today.
Really quite extraordinary. Let's turn now to Parliament. Darren McCaffrey is there on College Green for us. And Darren, just looking at the dynamics, even if Penny Mordaunt were to squeak over that 100 threshold there, getting 101 or something like that, there would still be likely an extraordinarily difficult dynamic there in the parliamentary party. She may well drop out of that in the style that Andrea Leadsom did back in 2017.
Yeah, I think that's almost certainly we're going to end up, if she does get to that 100 figure. In some ways, Tom, it was the same position that Boris Johnson was potentially going to find himself in, i.e. we've got Rishi Sunak racing ahead now. In the last hour, he has had the public backings of people like Priti Patel, of Michael Gove. We've seen some of the people who backed Boris Johnson the last day or so, like James Cleverly, Nadeem Zahawi and others, also rowing behind the former Chancellor. In those circumstances, as they were almost certainly, I think, probably in the next hour or so, see him get to half the parliamentary party, that 179 figure. It is entirely possible by 2 o'clock he could be on 200 plus. And so even if Penny Mordaunt got that 100 figure, you know what? That is not going to be, I think, enough for her to say that she's got control of the parliamentary party. And I suspect in those circumstances, ultimately, she will decide that actually it is best not to take it to the membership. I think if we're honest here, Tom, you know what, the senior figures within the party have been keen over the last week or so not to get as far as Friday. They were keen, essentially, for a coronation. And I think almost certainly that's where we're heading today. It would not surprise me if Penny Mordaunt doesn't get to that 100 figure and she even drops out later on this morning or before 2 p.m. I think things will move pretty quickly today. And as I've been saying this morning, it is notable that the King is in London later on to carry out his constitutional duty if necessary.
Interesting stuff there. Olivia, let's throw that to you. How might Conservative Party members feel if they're cut out of this process? Might that be a bit of a worry for party management? I mean, we're not thinking about deselections, but there was some talk of party members rebelling over the weekend.
Yeah, I think it's definitely quite possible that Tory party members will be very angry. Of course, Rishi Sunak lost quite decisively among the members just, 6-7 weeks ago. I heard that the 1922 committee wanted to change the rules so that there was an option to give party members a vote at the end of the process, because they were worried about being sued by a member or a group of members who said that they had a constitutional right to decide who the Prime Minister is. I think it's very, very likely that you do see quite a lot of anger there, although it's worth mentioning that this time, you've got last time when it was Liz Truss versus Rishi Sunak, you had quite a lot of the Tory party establishment. Those are people outside of the Conservative Parliamentary Party who are very influential Conservatives, Fraser Nelson, Charles Moore, Lord Frost, etc., all threw their weight behind Liz Truss. This time, they've all, and others too, have thrown their weight behind Rishi Sunak. And it can't be overstated how much the members listen to influential figures like that. So we could see them perfectly happy with the Rishi Sunak premiership. We'll just have to wait and see.
And potentially not wait very long. Darren, a final word to you. How are we expecting the next few hours to play out?
So in theory, we're going to wait and hold on to those nominations as they roll in. We will get to 2 p.m. and at that point we're going to find out from Graham Brady whether Penny Mordaunt effectively has got over that 100 figure. I think we can all work in the assumption that Rishi Sunak will. At that point, that will be then decision time, I would have thought, if not beforehand, for Penny Mordaunt. Her supporters this morning are claiming they are in the zone of the 100 figure, but they will have to make a decision about whether they want to drag this race out until Friday. And I use the term drag because it is clear, and some Conservative MPs have said this morning, they want this wrapped up effectively today. They want Rishi Sunak, who it's almost certainly likely to be in place by Wednesday for PMQs. If that wasn't the case, it'd be a pretty humiliating session, I would suggest, for Liz Truss. And the reason the timetable is so tight, not least of all because clearly people are concerned about the markets, though they have stabilised today, is that it is next Monday we're going to see that fiscal event, that big medium fiscal plan being set out by Jeremy Hunt, who will remain as Chancellor under either Rishi Sunak or Penny Mordaunt, and they're keen for the government to bed down as soon as possible. Of course, there will be new cabinet announcements. So that is why I think, Tom, as I say, by close of play today, we will have a new Prime Minister, and you know what, I'd be willing to put a bet on it at this stage that it will be the former Chancellor, Rishi Sunak.
What a remarkable turnaround, as you say, in just 7 weeks. Boris Johnson was Prime Minister until the start of September. In October, we saw that, of course, Liz Truss was Prime Minister, and now by November, we'll have Rishi Sunak. 3 Prime Ministers in 3 months, if it all goes as expected. Big thank you there to Olivia Utley and Darren McCaffrey for bringing us those updates from Number 10 and indeed from College Green outside Parliament too. Just to run over in the last few minutes, we've had some more declarations from Conservative members of Parliament. Robert Buckland, the Secretary of State for Wales, has declared for Rishi Sunak. Tom Randall MP has declared for Rishi Sunak. Andrew Stevenson, the former chairman of the party, has switched from Boris to Rishi. Victoria Atkins and Louis French have backed Rishi as well. So a good number more for Rishi just in the last few minutes. Penny still remains well below even 50 MPs. Of course, you need to get to 100 in order to get that nomination threshold. It looks like at the moment, Rishi Sunak has the momentum. And crucially for Rishi Sunak, a number of those who were backing Boris Johnson, those on whom Penny Mordaunt would rely in order to get over that 100 threshold, well, a lot of them are actually switching to Rishi Sunak. Let's speak now to a Member of Parliament who has backed Rishi Sunak for quite some time now. Steve Double is the MP for St Austell and Newquay and joins us from Westminster. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Firstly,
morning.
What is your view of the membership being cut out of this process, as now, I dare to say, seems likely?
Well, I spent the weekend in my constituency and talked to several members of my local association, and actually the vast majority of the ones that I spoke to actually said to me, please don't let it go to the members' vote this time. You MPs need to sort this out this time. I fully appreciate there will be some members who will be disappointed if it doesn't go to a members' vote, but I think for the sake of the country and the national interest, we MPs need to get this done as quickly as possible, and a new Prime Minister in number 10, hopefully today.
It's the most extraordinarily rapid process, if that is the case. I wonder, what are the first things that a potential Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, would need to do? Because the Conservative Party has revealed its divisions like never before over the past few weeks. How can Rishi Sunak possibly unite such a fractured party?
Well, clearly the first thing a new Prime Minister will have to do is form a government, and Rishi has made very clear that he will draw from across the breadth of the parliamentary party in forming that government. We've already seen with the people backing him that he has got people such as Steve Baker and Simon Hoare, who are not by anyone's imagination on the same wings of the party, coming together to say we need to unite behind Rishi in the national interest and back him to be Prime Minister. So I'm very confident that Rishi will be able to do that. He'll be able to form a government that represents the whole breadth of the parliamentary party and unite everyone behind him.
And yet, one of the big criticisms, of course, of Liz Truss was there were no prominent Rishi backers in her cabinet. Does this mean we can expect, definitely, prominent opponents of Rishi Sunak in his cabinet?
Well, clearly that will be down to Rishi if he does become Prime Minister. And let's be clear, we're not taking anything for granted today. We need to let the process play out. But I think Rishi will put people in positions based on their capability and that they're the right people for the job. And in doing that, to draw people together from across the party. So I think we can expect to see a broad breadth of people with different views and different expressions of conservatism in his government.
And what to make of the race as it stands now? Penny Mordaunt, of course, still saying that she's in this race. A new polling published this morning by her campaign teams showing that she is less unpopular in the Red Wall than Rishi Sunak, suggesting that she's the person more likely to win an election. What is the Rishi Sunak supporter message to those who back Penny at this time?
Well, I think that Rishi over the summer demonstrated that he has what it takes to do the job. He clearly has the right policies. What he predicted has come to pass. I think that gives him great credibility on the economy. And I think what we need is someone who can grasp the situation immediately, who understands the challenges that our country is facing and can provide the right answers. And I think Rishi has shown time and time again that he is the right person to do that.
Well, Steve Double, thank you so much for joining us this morning on The Briefing. Really appreciate your views there. And I suppose it's not long now to wait to see if that all does unfold as expected. Thanks for joining us. Well, we were talking, of course, about the expectation that Rishi Sunak may well be the person to become Prime Minister in just a few hours' time. But, of course, he does still face one more rival. Penny Mordaunt is in this race and is not, at this stage, backing out. Indeed, her campaign team have this morning released polling suggesting that, and I quote, Penny Mordaunt rated top choice for PM by voters who know the candidates. Yes, this is polling from across the United Kingdom that suggests that Penny Mordaunt is more popular than Rishi Sunak amongst those who know who she is. I suppose that is a crucial qualifier there. The polls also say that in the seats that the Tories gained in 2019, centred in the Red Wall, Mordaunt is the most likeable choice, pitching as a likeable figure. Perhaps, again, less well-known, perhaps less well-known in terms of what she's done in government, less opportunity to be disliked, but certainly that idea of a likeable choice being pushed there by the campaign. And finally, this polling from the Mordaunt campaign this morning says that voters say Penny Mordaunt is less divisive and is seen as more trustworthy than Rishi Sunak or Boris Johnson. So that's the message from the Penny Mordaunt campaign this morning. The question is Is there enough time for that message to percolate amongst MPs and for that crucial 100 MP threshold to be met? Well, let's speak to a member of Mordaunt's campaign team now. John Lamont is, of course, a Conservative MP. He's with the Penny camp, joins us now from College Green. Thank you for joining us. First of all, shouldn't Penny drop out now? Does she really have the support necessary?
No, Penny's been speaking to colleagues over the last few days. It's very clear she's got a huge amount of support. Myself and some other colleagues have also been engaging with MPs. It's very clear that many MPs think that Penny is a unifier. She can bring the party together, she can bring the country together. She's a formidable performer in the House of Commons, both against Labour and the SNP. And as you've alluded to in the polling, I think the wider electorate view Penny as somebody that they could warm to as well. So for all those reasons, I think it's really important that Penny does go forward. We're very, very close to getting the nominations that we need to let her to go through to the next stage, and then the members can decide.
Interestingly, last night, Boris Johnson said that he had the numbers required, but simply through the party management issue, he did not believe it would be right for him to go forward. Say if he got nominated barely over the line and then the members chose him, but the MPs were against him, that makes it very hard to govern a party. Why would Penny be in a different position? Were Rishi Sunak, as he is close to now getting over half the parliamentary party, were Penny to just squeak in over that line and then win with the membership? Surely governance of the party would be very, very difficult indeed.
Well, I've spoken to many of the MPs who are backing Rishi. Indeed, I voted for Rishi during the summer stage of the last campaign, and many of them are not just colleagues but friends. And I'm very clear that if Penny was to become Prime Minister, as I hope she does, they would all rally behind Penny and would come together as a unified party and government and help bring the country together as we face these formidable economic challenges. So I think Penny is uniquely placed. She has experience both in Parliament but also from her upbringing to understand the real pressures and difficulties that people in Britain are facing just now. And I think that's really important in terms of rebuilding trust and also ensuring that people know that the person at the top of government understands and relates to the problems that they're dealing with day to day just now.
Well, John Lamont, thank you so much for joining us here on The Briefing this morning. Really, really crucial to get that perspective as well. And I suppose not long now to wait to see if that magic 100 threshold is met by Penny Mordaunt. Thanks for joining us. Now, finally today on the programme, we have a little fact check. Outside the world of Westminster, some very online voices have been claiming that the Pfizer vaccine was not tested for transmission, and therefore, they claim, the country's hugely successful mass vaccination drive was somehow wrong-headed. But these voices are wrong. They're reinventing history. During the vaccination drive, medical professionals were telling us that vaccinated people should still take precautions, as they may be able to pass on the virus. Let's look at this article from January 2021. It highlights Jonathan Van Tam saying vaccinated people can still pass on the virus. Indeed, many criticised the medical establishment for being too cautious at that time, not explaining that vaccines significantly reduced transmission, as all the evidence suggests that they did. Indeed, by April 2021, Public Health England did publish evidence that even one dose of COVID vaccine could cut transmission by up to half. In short, as is not controversial in the wider public, vaccines work. Let's get more now with this from Tom Whipple, the science editor at The Times. And Tom, why is it that this sort of conspiracy theory bubbled up over the past couple of weeks that somehow the Pfizer vaccine didn't knock transmission?
Yeah, it was slightly bizarre for people who were there at the time and reporting on this. A Pfizer executive was asked a question in the European Parliament and replied by saying that no, they hadn't tested the vaccine for transmission, which was absolutely true. You know, it was just a reiteration of their trial protocol. What they did was they looked to see if it would stop infection in people, and it did. And it's very hard to see how, until you've got population scale stuff, you could check transmission, which is the idea that, very loosely speaking, it's the idea that if you get vaccinated, you're also protecting other people. And that's obviously why it was so controversial because it's the idea that this isn't just a personal thing, this is something that might matter for public health. But yeah, they didn't test it because they couldn't test it, and it's very hard to see how they could. But at the time, people were saying, well, look, obviously this is going to have an effect on protecting other people, because if you're not infected, you can't pass it on. The study you pointed to, which was a Public Health England study, was looking at what happened if you're infected as well. So if you're infected having been vaccinated, you are additionally less likely to pass it on. So that 50% would have come on top of the effect that the vaccine had, which at its base level of preventing infections. But yeah, it was this weird implication, this sort of the idea of both revelatoriness and mendaciousness, when in fact they were simply repeating what we'd known all along, and indeed which everyone reported.
Yes, it's peculiar that this sort of one offhand comment from one executive from the company is taken as gospel or extrapolated to mean much more than what it was said, than everything else, the countless studies, I suppose, the medical establishment. And maybe that's the issue here. Potentially, people are more likely to want to believe one little clip they've seen online than the entirety of the medical establishment, because it is coming from the medical establishment. Is there an issue there in terms of science communication, in terms of what people almost want to believe?
Yeah, I think there's a group of people who have got very cross about COVID. Perhaps there's a lot of people who've got very cross about COVID, and a lot of it's understandable. There were a lot of people who got very cross about the idea of mandates for vaccines, passports, coercion, all of these things, which aren't happening now, but you can understand why people got cross. I think the issue is that, as has been the case throughout the pandemic, to an extent, what we've needed is a debate about policy, and we've ended up having this debate about the nature of reality. And it's perfectly possible to believe that we shouldn't have vaccine passports, which, by the way, we don't, and still believe that the vaccines had an effect on transmission, and also believe that when they were first tested, they were tested for the prevention of infection. Because if you look at the trial protocol, in the original trial, only 8 people who were vaccinated also got infected. There is simply no way that you could conceive of that you could test this as a transmission-blocking vaccine at that stage, and they didn't.
And then, of course, the wider population tests came later, for example, through Public Health England, that did show those transmission reductions as well. So in those two ways, as you were saying, the vaccines did. I suppose things do muddy the water now with Omicron and the more transmissible versions of this virus. But I'm so glad, Tom Whipple, that you could make the time this morning to help clear that up. Really important public service journalism there. Thanks for joining us on The Briefing.
Thank you very much.
That's it for me today on the programme. Thank you so much for joining me. And of course, do stick with us for the next few hours as the politics in this country hots up and we find out who may be our next Prime Minister.
And looking ahead to the weather, the UK is breezy and mild today with sunny spells and scattered locally heavy showers for most. Let's have a look at the details.
It's going to be breezy, especially around the coast of southwest England, but mainly dry with some bright or sunny spells. There's going to be some scattered, occasionally heavy showers likely, particularly in the west.
And mostly dry across London and the southeast with plenty of sunshine. Rather breezy, especially along the Channel coast where the odd shower is possible.
What about southern and western Wales? Well, scattered locally heavy showers. It's going to be interspersed with some sunny spells. It's rather windy, especially across the coast and the hills. It should feel quite mild, though.
A bit breezy, but mostly dry in the Midlands. Plenty of sunny spells for all. However, the odd shower possible, most likely towards the west.
Now, the east and northeast of England is going to be mostly dry with patchy cloud and sunny spells. The cloud could bring the odd shower. It's feeling nice and warm, though, again, particularly for this time of year.
Scattered locally heavy showers affecting northern and western Scotland. There'll be some sunny spells, but a brisk wind too. Going to feel nice and warm, though, apparently, in the sunshine.
There's going to be a mix of sunny spells and scattered heavy showers across Northern Ireland. The showers most frequent there in the north and the west. It's going to be breezy, but feeling quite mild.
So scattered, locally heavy showers continuing, especially in the west of the UK. Drier and brighter across the east. That's your weather today.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The people